Are you shocked at the fact that you're donating a substantial amount of money to facilitate Trump's election? Is that something you would have believed in the realm of possibility, say, 5 years ago?
So what's been reported in the media is simply not true. So
okay.
I'm not donating $45 million a month to Trump. And now what I have done is I have created a PAC or super PAC, whatever you want to call it, which I simply call it the America PAC. And
Do you want to tell everybody who's listening what a PAC is? Because people
it's a political action committee.
Yeah.
It's an organization, it's a legal entity that can receive funding. That funding can then be used to help with political campaigns.
Yep, okay. And how does that differ from a direct donation? There are specific limits on direct donations to candidates, and the PAC system is the way of putting a political structure in place that sort of runs parallel with the formal political system. And
yeah, you can donate money directly to candidates. That amount is fairly small.
Yeah.
And you can donate a lot more money to a political action committee or a super PAC. There are various rules that govern the operation of PACs and super PACs, but it certainly allows for a lot more money in the system than would otherwise be possible. And these are used, to be clear, on the Democrat and Republican side.
Yes.
And I actually think that...
So it's an open playing field on the PAC side.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. What are you hoping to accomplish with this? And what's the PAC called?
It's called the America PAC.
America PAC. Okay.
Yeah,
well, that's easy to remember.
It's very easy to remember.
Yeah.
And it's not meant to be sort of a hyper-partisan PAC. It's actually the core principles of this America PAC are, the intent is to promote the principles that made America great in the first place. So I wouldn't say that I'm, say, for example, MAGA, or Make America Great Again. I think America is great. I'm more MA, Make America Greater. And there's some core pillars, core values that have, I think, made America great.
Could you elucidate those?
Yeah. So one of them is being a meritocracy. Or maybe as much of a meritocracy as possible, such that you get ahead as a function of your hard work and your skill, and nothing else. Yeah. Which is why I would be opposed to, for example, things like DEI.
Adrian Wooldridge documented the fact that the alternative to meritocracy historically is nepotism and dynasty.
Absolutely.
It's not equity.
It's not equity, correct.
It's nepotism and dynasty.
Exactly.
Right? So that's very much worth knowing. Okay. Yeah. Meritocracy has its price because it's a severe judge, but the alternative is nepotism and aristocracy or dynasty. Okay, so meritocracy.
Clearly, America, it's not like America's been purely a meritocracy, but it has been more of a meritocracy than any other place.
Which is good. That's good.
Which I regard as good.
Yeah.
Promoting meritocracy, promoting freedom to operate, meaning the least amount of government intervention possible. We want, and this is, I think, important to fight because the natural tendency over time, almost entropy, is that the hand of government gets heavier every year.
Yep.
The laws and regulations accumulate every year, and these laws and regulations are immortal.
That's the evil uncle of the king. A very old story. Very old story. The Egyptians were wrestling with that problem 4,000 years ago.
Yeah, so you have to have you have to really take an active role in reducing the number of laws and regulations. Otherwise, as more and more laws and regulations are passed, eventually everything becomes illegal. And you start getting into these Orwellian situations where...
Then everyone's poor and miserable.
Where action A is illegal and action B is illegal, and there isn't anything you can do that is legal. Take an example to give an example of some lawfare that was leveled against SpaceX, for example. We were told for many years that we could not hire anyone who was not a permanent resident.
They had to remember that.
So SpaceX develops advanced rocket technology, which is considered an advanced weapons technology because it's a core part of like intercontinental ballistic missiles.
Yeah.
So there are only a handful of things in the sort of highest level of weapon technology, and rocket technology is one of those, because we could deliver a payload and basically bomb anywhere on Earth, from anywhere on Earth. So I was told in no uncertain terms by the government that if we hired anyone who is not a permanent resident of the United States, they had to have either a green card or a citizen, that I would go to prison.
Oh, yeah.
Because the presumption if somebody's not a permanent resident is that they will leave the United States and take the rocket technology from SpaceX to potentially to countries that would cause harm to the United States. Pretty solid reasoning, I think. And then a few years ago, the Biden administration decided to sue SpaceX for failing to hire asylum seekers.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
We're told on the one side that if we hire anyone who's not a permanent resident, we go to prison. Now we're told if we don't hire asylum seekers, not people who've been granted asylum,
Seekers.
Seekers. They aspire to asylum. They are therefore not a permanent resident, but if we don't hire them, we also go to prison.
The purpose of being damned if you do and damned if you don't is to make damn sure that you're damned.
Correct.
So that's a kind of
that seemed to be insane and unfair. And why did the Biden administration? Because they can only do so many big cases per year. There's a finite number they can.
Yeah.
Why would the Justice Department, of all the injustices that occur, pick this as one of their biggest cases?
Yeah. Why? Why do you think?
I think they probably had I don't know. There was some lawfare. I think it was I think it was political. I think it was
the relationship to you.
I don't know all the things, but this is before supporting Trump or anything like that.
Yeah.
In fact, I supported Biden, and before that, Hillary, and before that, Obama. So
that's why I was asking if this comes as a shock.
I don't know if it could just be random. It could be like they didn't tell us why pick us. Why do such a crazy lawsuit?
Random's a bad. Even if it is random, that's still bad.
It's still bad.
It's just a marker of incompetence. But if it's not random, it seems to be highly unlikely to be random.
Yes, and also why attack SpaceX and not say Boeing or Lockheed? I think part of it might be that SpaceX is not unionized, and the Democratic Party in the U.S. is fundamentally controlled by the unions. Mm-hmm. So that I'm speculating here, but since we're not unionized, we're I think a very happy workforce, and I'm out there on the factory floor. I don't see if people are happy. It's a good vibe.
They're engaged in something ridiculously exciting.
It's cool.
At minimum, that's not nothing. People can go a long ways if they're part of a project that's aiming at Mars, let's say. That's definitely aiming up. That's really exciting. That's a real opportunity for people.
Yeah.
What do you think of Trump?
I don't subscribe to cults of personality.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really just we've got a choice of administrations, and we have to pick one.
Yeah.
And I think there are flaws on both sides.
What do you think his flaws are? He's a complicated person, and I've been trying to suss him out and figure him out, because some of the things that look like flaws might be advantages in disguise. He seems to me to be pretty good at standing up to psychopathic bullies, for example.
Sure.
And that's a useful skill, and it's not easy. You have to be a bit of a monster to manage that. And it isn't obvious to me how many of even the divisive idiosyncrasies of Trump are the mirror image of his capacity to stand up to bullies. Right? That's a tough call, man. So you've obviously decided to lay your efforts down on the side of the Trump administration in the forthcoming election. And so
it's really, I think we need a change of administration. I think many years ago, I think probably the Democratic Party was the party of meritocracy and of personal freedom. Yeah. They used to be the free speech party.
Yeah.
And these days, they seem to be the censorship party under the guise of hate speech. So weirdly, in my view, the Republican Party is actually the party of that's the meritocracy party, because the Democrats are also promoting DEI, which is really just another form of racism and sexism.
It's the most pernicious form, I think, actually.
So it's anti-meritocratic. DEI is fundamentally anti-meritocratic.
It insists on dividing people by groups as the primary, what would you say, conceptual distinction between individuals.
Yes,
race,
in fact,
ethnicity, sex.
I think the Democratic Party is stoking division.
I think the evidence for that's clear. All of this group identity nonsense has made things much more. I can see it in Toronto. When my kids grew up in Toronto downtown, I would say they were race, ethnicity, and gender blind.
Yeah.
They had an unbelievably diverse range of friends, and no one cared.
Sure.
And even in Toronto, that started to shift around with this emphasis on group division. It's a really ugly thing to see. So yeah, not good, not good.
Yeah, so my view is that at this point in the United States, the Republican Party is more in line with meritocracy and with personal freedom. So
I've never had a conservative. Many times with my left-wing friends, let's say, they'd refuse to talk to someone, me included, definitely, because I've invited prominent Democrats to come on my podcast in great numbers for a very long time, and I've got absolutely nowhere with that. They'll talk to me in private. They will not talk to me in public. And so that's never happened.
They're afraid of being shunned?
Absolutely. Yeah. 100% that's what they're afraid of.
Sure.
Definitely. And they've told me that. It's not a secret. Yeah. But that's never happened on the Republican side. I found it much easier because I've talked to a lot of Democrats and a lot of Republicans. And I found it much, much easier to talk to the Republicans. And that is somewhat of a shock. I wouldn't have necessarily expected that.
Yeah, and I should be clear that it's not like I think the Republican Party is flawless. It certainly isn't. It's got its issues. There are extremists within the Republican Party that I don't agree with. But one has, if it's a two-party system, essentially, you got to pick one or the other. And so you weigh the good and the bad. And my opinion is that...
And you flip the coin.
We need that the country would be better off with the Republican administration than a Democrat.
Trump was pretty good at not having wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is actually quite a big thing. It's really a big thing. And what he did with the Abraham Accords, that was a miracle, I think.
No, absolutely.
He should have got the Nobel Prize for that.
I think there's something to be said that America needs a strong leader, and where you have the perception of strength.
Yeah.
Now, you have to admire Trump after getting shot with blood streaming down his face. It could have been a second shooter, who knows? Nonetheless, was fist pumping, fight after being shot.
Yeah.
And this is not...
He's an ornery guy. He's funny, too.
Yes, and he's brave. He has courage. This is instinctual courage.
Yeah.
It's not calculated. It's not some arranged event. It's in the moment.
You could see that then, because that was not a time when you're going to...
You see true courage in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you want a leader who's going to deal with some very tough cookies out there, who's going to deal with a Putin, Kim Jong-un, or...
China.
Yeah, China. And they'll think twice about messing with Trump.
Yeah.
And poor Biden can't make it up the stairs. And obviously he's stepped out of the race. But nobody's going to be intimidated by Biden. It's impossible. But I think they will be intimidated by a guy who was fist pumping after getting shot.
We saw that, I think, in his administration.
Yeah.
Because peace did reign, and that's a bit of empirical evidence. Can I ask you a little bit about one of the things that you've been relatively vocal about, and I understand that there's a personal connection to this as well. I am, for what it's worth, I'm particularly unhappy with what my colleagues in the psychological field have done with regards to gender-affirming care. I think they are a pack of contemptible cowards.
Yes.
And I think that everyone who's been involved in this in relationship to minors should go to prison.
I agree.
Okay, why do you agree? What's your oar in the water in this particular... This is the worst medical and psychological malpractice I've ever seen anywhere, including what I've done, what I've studied in reference to historical atrocity. Eugenics, what do you call those, prefrontal lobotomy, even the sorts of things that were going on in Nazi Germany. At least the bloody Nazis knew it was wrong and tried to hide it.
Yes.
Okay, so why are you engaged in this particular battle? You said you're going to move a couple of your company headquarters out of California because of the last legislative move that Gavin Newsom pulled with regards to the trans issue. So
yes, to be clear, there were many things leading up to that point.
Yeah.
I was clear, look, it's not that it's the one straw, it's just the final straw.
Yeah, okay. So it's a cumulative issue. Fair enough.
It's a cumulative issue.
Right. So it's not dramatic grandstanding. It's...
No, and moreover, I've had conversations with Gavin Newsom before where I said, if you pass legislation like this, if you sign legislation like this, in my view, puts children in danger, I will move my companies out of California. He knew that ahead of time.
Okay. You've talked to him directly about this. What the hell is he doing? Like, I cannot understand. I really cannot understand. The Democrats...
He's pandering to the far left.
Why did the Democrat moderates constantly pander to the far left? I worked with the Democrats in California for 5 years, trying to get them to separate themselves from the far left. They wouldn't admit that they existed even, and they certainly would never separate them. They wouldn't admit, for example, that Antifa even existed.
Sure,
So
burning down buildings.
There's this unbelievable blind spot with regards to the far left radicals. And the moderate Democrats I think they're useful idiots, fundamentally. So
yeah, going back to the so-called gender-affirming care, which is a terrible euphemism.
That's for sure.
It's really a child sterilization is what it should be.
No, there's mutilation, too. We want to make sure that amalgam is...
Sure, fair enough. Yeah. It's child mutilation and sterilization.
Yeah. Under the guise of gender-affirming care and compassion. Right.
It's evil.
Literally can't imagine anything worse than that.
Yes, it's evil. I mean, you're taking kids who are obviously often far below the age of consent.
Yep. Confused, miserable.
Yes. The reality is that almost every child goes through some kind of identity crisis.
That's part of puberty.
Exactly. It's just part of growing up. It's very possible for adults to manipulate children who are having a natural identity crisis into believing that they are the wrong gender.
Yeah.
And that they need to be the other gender, or they need to be a boy or boy needs to be a girl, and that
will solve all their problems.
And that will solve their problems. And then they give them sterilizing drugs, which are called also a misnomer, puberty blocker. These are sterilization drugs, so they can never have children again.
Yeah.
They can have double mastectomies, the mutilation.
They have their forearms stripped to build non-functioning penises.
Yeah, it's macabre. And we have an age of consent for a reason. The reason you can't get, say, tattoos below age 18, or drink, or drive. There are ages at which you can do things, because if we allow children to take permanent actions when they're 10, 12, 14 years old, they will do things that they subsequently greatly regret.
Yes, I've interviewed a couple of people who've done exactly that, and it's pretty damn painful.
So I think
Why are you willing to make this an issue, do you think?
It happened to one of my older boys, where I was essentially tricked into signing documents for one of my older boys, Xavier. This is before I had really any understanding of what was going on, and we had COVID going on, and there was a lot of confusion. And I was told, Xavier might commit suicide if he...
That was a lie right from the outset. No reliable clinician ever believed that. There was never any evidence for that. And also, if there's a higher suicide rate, the reason is because of the underlying depression and anxiety, and not because of the gender dysphoria. And every goddamn clinician knows that too. And they're too cowardly to come out and say it. And so and then we end up in exactly, when I saw that lie start to propagate, it just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I see. So you're telling parents that unless they agree to this radical transformation, that their children are going to die, and you think that's moral, and you think that's true. That is so pathological that it's almost incomprehensible. I can't imagine anything worse. I can't imagine a therapist doing anything worse than that, or sitting by idly and remaining silent while his colleagues are doing it.
It's incredibly evil, and I agree with you that people that have been promoting this should go to prison.
It won't stop till that happens.
Yeah.
It'll just go underground. Puberty blockers are being accessed online by kids all the time through non-medical channels. Yeah, it's not going to stop. Okay, so I see. So that's
I was into doing this, and it wasn't explained to me that puberty blockers are actually just sterilization drugs. Anyway, and I lost my son, essentially. They call it dead naming for a reason.
Yeah,
all right, so the reason it's called dead naming is because your son is dead. So my son Xavier is dead, killed by the woke mind virus.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what that would be like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's lots of people in that situation now.
Right.
It's not pretty. And lots of demolished kids.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's a good reason to be the final straw. All right, so let's...
So I vowed to destroy the woke mind virus after that. And we're making some progress.
Join the club.
Yeah.